the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is my co-host, Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, we are 1 day away from live Cowboys football. How you doing, buddy?
One more sleep, and then we get Cowboys football in some form or fashion. And Steelers football for you too, Marcus, just so you can get excited about that.
I am excited to watch my favorite team on Thursday night. It should be a lot of fun.
and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I'm excited. You know, we've kind of been through the desert of very little football news, and we've kind of made it to the other side, and we've had training camp now, and now we're ready for the next step. The next step being actual live football as we see it in the preseason.
So we're going to talk about the Cowboys practice that they had on Tuesday, a general theme that we've kind of noticed over camp. But we do have some injury-related news that we should get to. Of course, we have to start with Dak Prescott. Mike McCarthy kind of updated the team, the media on Tuesday about Dak, saying that they are going to take a step back from maybe the early diagnosis. It sounds like they're just going to be more conservative in their approach regarding Dak. I think people got really upset and really angered when a couple of people tweeted out that he had a step back or a setback. That doesn't appear to be the case, correct?
Yeah, no, I actually don't think that the timeline's changed at all. I mean, I don't know what. I don't know if you look at the schedule. I don't know if people were expecting to have him come out to practice Tuesday and throw for a Cards day for a game that he's not going to play in.
I was going to say, did people think he was going to play in the Hall of Fame game?
Yeah, so if he's not playing in the Hall of Fame game, why would he practice Tuesday? And if he's not playing in the Hall of Fame game and he's not practicing Tuesday, he's not practicing until they get back from Ohio, and that's this weekend. So
it's kind of been the timeline the whole time, right? Like from the time he quote unquote injured himself, they had like 3 practices. They knew they were going to have Wednesday off, Thursday's game, Friday off, Saturday's the first practice with the Rams, and I think they might even have a day off after that. Like, why not just wait until Monday or Tuesday when you're practicing against the Rams to bring them back? Like, again, it's August 4th. There's absolutely no rush here.
Yeah, honestly, I think this whole thing is kind of media created because, just not media created, but media driven, right? Because
you think Hard Knocks has something to do with it?
Maybe, but I think it's more just that, that McCarthy kind of told them generally in a very blasé, because it isn't a big deal sort of way. Yeah, he's probably going to practice in a few days or something like that. And then when it wasn't a few days, like the media came back, it's like, where's Dak? Why isn't Dak out there? And it's like, well, why would Dak be out there? Like, it's just like, if you look at the schedule and kind of just like logically think about it, you've got a quarterback who has a sore arm from throwing too many footballs. Why would you not give him these other extra days when he's not playing in this game? This whole week is an extra week of training camp that's completely unnecessary, which also applies to a lot of the other players in this team, including Amari Cooper and Demarcus Lawrence. It's like, why would we have these guys out for an extra week of training camp they don't need?
Right.
I just don't think that there's much here. I think it's Dak's arm is still they're being even more cautious about it because they want him to throw when they need him to throw, and him throwing the football right now is not terribly important because of the extra week of training camp, and they still have a long way to go before we're playing football games.
Now, I did see some people on Twitter arguing that it's more concerning. They're more concerned about his arm and his shoulder than his ankle, because whenever you're messing with a quarterback's shoulder, that's always scary. Are you concerned at all long term about this injury?
I always find it funny that people manage to like homogenize all injuries or pain in one area of a body as if it's all the same. Like he banged his shoulder. We should be as concerned as if his arm fell off. Like, I mean,
Right. Right.
He has a sore shoulder, guys. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's really, to me, it's not as concerning until, it's really time to start needing him and he can't show up to practice. They don't need him right now. It's all gravy.
No.
This is why make him even more sore doing stuff when it's an unnecessary part of practice for
not
Dak.
worried about him at all. What about Demarcus Lawrence? He came off the PUP list on Tuesday. He's not ready to practice, seems like yet. Again, we've got Wednesday, no practice, Thursday game, Friday, no practice. It sounds like the Cowboys are going to be very slow with this. The thing that was actually shocking to me is he revealed that he had another offseason surgery, which we knew, but it was a herniated disc that he had operated on. So is that concerning long-term for you?
I mean, backs are situations, when he's got previously had a bulging disc. This is a herniated cleanup situation. It's clearly going to be a thing that he's probably going to deal with for a while, but we'll see how it actually affects his play. He played fantastic last year at different points, so I'm not terribly concerned until it starts becoming a thing where it's affecting his ability to be on the field, which it has in the past. But I also think that this was more of a cleanup situation to kind of just make it more comfortable for him.
I agree. The one thing that is really encouraging about Demarcus Lawrence is that he looks like he's in great shape. He looks slim. He looks explosive. And that's actually what we're going to talk about next. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing, and you can track all of the action on BetOnline. Before the next pitch, head over to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Landon, so we are hearing from a lot of different players that this is the best shape they've been in. Ezekiel Elliott said he's down to, 220 pounds? 250
I think he's
pounds?
under 220, actually.
Yeah. Lyle Collins is down to 310 pounds. We saw Amari Cooper on Tuesday talk about how his goal is to play at 210 pounds. It seems like there's this concerted effort for the entire Cowboys roster to get slimmer and leaner. Do you think that was by design, or do you think it was just because there's a lot of older players trying to revitalize their career?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've spent a lot of portion of the offseason talking about best shape of your life season, right? Of just that there's this whole period before the training camp where everyone talks about how they're in the best shape of their life. I think that what's odd here is that we're seeing all these different players talk about a very concerted effort of losing weight. I will also mention too that it does seem like a lot of them are using a lot of the same methodology to lose that weight too. It seems like there's a lot of intermittent fasting, a lot of cutting out, eating after 8 p.m. I saw 2 different people mention that as a way that they were losing weight, which
cutting out
is
alcohol.
Cutting out alcohol. So I'm wondering if there isn't more of an emphasis to listening to the nutritionists, or maybe more of just like forcing that kind of stuff onto the players. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you talked about it. Cooper, Lawrence, Tyron Smith, I think is down a little bit in his weight. Leo Collins, obviously way down in his weight. Leighton Vander Esch. It's interesting that they clearly, it feels like they made a concerted, Zeke, obviously, they made a concerted effort to kind of cut weight, get faster as a team. And I would say that it probably is just, normal training camp stuff. But to me this year specifically, it just seems like there are so many different players that are specifically talking about a dedicated effort to dropping pounds this year, coming into the season. And that it makes me feel like it has to be somehow team driven, or at least, discussed among teammates. 'Cause you talk about 4 to 5 major players on this team, leaders on this team, that are all making a huge effort to kind of cut weight and get quicker.
When I think of like the Falcons at their peak with Dan Quinn, I think the thing, like, was it 2016 when they went to the Super Bowl? Like, the thing that was so noticeable about that team was they were so much faster and quicker than every other team, right? Like, you saw it in the first 3 quarters against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. It looked like they were playing at 2 completely different speeds, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, well, we don't have to talk about what happened the rest of that game. But Dan Quinn has always been somebody who prioritizes speed. So it makes sense that a lot of these guys are trying to get, leaner and quicker. And then on offense, I think this is a team that wants to play at a really fast pace on offense, right? Like during the Jason Garrett era, it was, let's control the clock, let's grind it out. I just kind of think those days are over. Like Amari is going to be running 65, 70 routes a game. He needs to be at 210 pounds rather than 225. So I like it. I think this is what I would, the news that I wanted to see out of training camp. So I'm excited so far. Any other thoughts on the Cowboys' weight loss?
I mean, just a couple of sorted ones. It's interesting to me that Demarcus Lawrence said that he's been playing at this weight for the last 4 years. He said that he played at 245 the last 4 years, and that may be the case, but his body
looks way lighter.
His body
now.
Looks completely different. I mean, he looks sleeker. He just doesn't have a lot of the bulk that he did up top. That it just seems like it's just like a lot leaner. He looks a lot closer to Randy Gregory's body. Yeah. It's crazy how Randy Gregory and Demarcus Lawrence over the years have kind of gotten closer. It's crazy. So yeah, they're kind of very similar looking. Obviously, we've gone over and over about Zeke and his weight loss. Cooper, to me, it was in the interview that I really noticed it. His face and his upper body, he just looks leaner, and he just doesn't look like he has as much bulk up top, which it was always crazy to watch Amari Cooper run routes because he is this guy who's this incredible, small ball route running receiver who's legit 220 plus,
Yeah.
And so he even talked about how he was a big, obviously, Julio Jones fan because he's an Alabama guy, and he thought that he wanted to be that. And now he's realizing that he doesn't think the extra bulk really helps with his, yards after catch. It doesn't help him break tackles.
His game is not built on physicality, right? Like it never has been.
I will go even a step further in saying it may have been a problem and been a cause of some of the lower body injuries he's had. You see these guys that bulk up too much and their bodies, and they're trying to generate force the way that they did before they had that bulk. A lot of those guys end up getting like hamstrings and those kind of lower body just because their bodies just aren't used to, making that much weight move. Right. So it'll be interesting to see if that helps there. I mean, he said that he's going to be running so fast you won't be able to see him. So I'm interested to see that version of Amari for sure.
I did have a question about Amari. I saw Michael Fabiano from Sports Illustrated was there at practice yesterday. He actually filmed a video of Amari kind of walking off the field with a limp. Is that something to be worried about? Like when you've seen him working out on the courts, like does he have a noticeable limp? What are your thoughts there?
I haven't noticed the limp, but I mean, I imagine that his foot is hurting. You have to remember that, and this has always been true. The guys that work out on the cords with Britt Brown, those are the guys who are working the hardest on the field. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and Britt Brown puts them to work in a way that you don't get in practice because you're not having to worry about practice. You're just out there to work. So Britt had him on the cords hardcore yesterday and doing a whole bunch of different stuff. And we could talk about some other guys I saw too. I mean, we saw Demarcus Lawrence before they announced that he was off the pup. You're starting to see an uptick in his activity yesterday. Obviously, he was passing his physical. I saw Tristan Hill doing a lot more yesterday than I had seen him do at any point. He was actually working with coaches on pass rush move, actually working off of a sled. So, there's people are making some advances here. And again, certainly it's something to watch, but I don't get too surprised when guys who are working with Britt Brown are feeling a little bit sore after they're finished.
So we talked about guys who are in the best shape of their lives. Is there anybody that you saw, during practice that you would say, hey, maybe this guy isn't in the best shape of their life? Is there anybody that you can point to? Because there is one guy every year that comes in out of shape. Have we found that guy yet?
I mean, Zeke looks great. Marcus, what are you talking about?
It's not Zeke this year. Zeke is in great shape. Listen, Twitter Twitter's not great, but Twitter is great for bullying people to get back into shape. Let me tell you that much.
Twitter, apparently Twitter demands a sacrifice. They want to know who's out of shape. Mike McCarthy's not looking too great. I mean, I should joke. I'm probably the same shape he is. I don't know. I haven't really noticed anyone specifically terribly out of shape, and maybe that kind of goes back to what we're speaking about earlier. It just seems like whether it's the seriousness of training camp, the seriousness that these guys are coming in with their body weight and their shape, it seems like there's a very serious concerted effort by these group of guys to come in here and hit the ground running. And we've seen some of the crispest, is that the word? Some of the most crisp practices I've ever seen in these last few weeks. Yeah. And I think that it has a lot to do with the fact of a lot of hard work that was put into this team during the OTAs and minicamp sessions. So and beyond that too, in the DAC yard, all the other spots. So we're all being very cautiously optimistic. We don't want to oversell or overpromise because that's what training camp is. But this team looks ready to go in a way that you would hope to see for a team that after what happened to them last year.
Listen, I don't blame Mike McCarthy at all if he put on a couple pounds. That Dallas and Texas barbecue hits differently than Green Bay, right?
Absolutely. And when you're in Green Bay, you need all that weight just to stay warm.
Trust me, I know. All right, one more quick break to tell you guys about Built Bar, the absolute best tasting protein bar out there. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate with amazing flavors. It's just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Best of all, they taste fantastic. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 15% off your next box. All right, Landon, the Cowboys did have a practice on Tuesday. It seemed like it was pretty light. Garrett Gilbert, again, was the quarterback for most of practice. Any big takeaways or anything that's worth talking about from that practice?
It was a lot of cards. So they're starting to do some stuff to get ready for Pittsburgh. I think generally you've seen Garrett Gilbert get a little bit better every day, which is something.
Yep.
I'm certainly excited to see him get out there and play on Thursday, just to kind of see what the Cowboys have there. I think I saw a lot of interesting kind of mix and matching that they were doing yesterday in practice, just with groups, just with personnel. Nothing really to work home to write home about, but just it's interesting to me how they are really trying to get some reps with really kind of varying personnel groups, so that I would assume so players can get used to playing with a wide variety of guys.
I agree.
Whether it's because of injury or whether it's because you're just going to be doing that in this Hall of Fame game because of the limitations. McCarthy talked about how he's treating this and the Saturday practice as kind of one game, right? And I think what that means essentially is that there's going to be a small group of guys who are going to play probably a lot in both games, but then the rest of everybody else, he's probably going to divide between, all right, you'll get the majority of your game reps in the Hall of Fame game, and then we'll count the LA Rams practice for you guys as your game reps. So I'm interested to see the guys that there's going to be a small group of guys who are going to have to play in this game, the Rams practice, and in the Cardinals game, which is right after that. So it'll be interesting.
Their tongues are going to be hanging out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we'll see at the very least is some of these guys that and we'll talk about this more in depth tomorrow, but some of these guys who we haven't really gotten an opportunity to see very much in practice, we're going to see a lot more opportunity for them in this game to kind of really get a chance to stick out and shine. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing kind of, even though it's stripped down, even though it's very vanilla, just how the defense gets deployed, how things get deployed out. So there's lots of kind of very subtle secondary questions that'll get answered on Thursday. But hey, I mean, until we get regular season football, I'll take the small and subtle answers any day of the week over nothing.
I've got one more question for you. You've been out practice, 3 times now? 3, 4 times?
It's 4, yeah.
How many field goals have you seen so far?
You know, it's funny you say that. We were talking about that at practice yesterday. I've only ever noticed like maybe or 2 field goal attempts per practice, and that's definitely different than Jason Garrett. Like that's
let's just say that we're not planning on settling for many field goals.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it may be because both your starting kicker and your starting punter are not technically working right now. And so maybe they just don't want to overwork Neswalder or whatever, however you say his name.
He's going to get the kick a lot here.
He's going to get
Thursday,
a ton.
Scrimmage against Cardinals. Oh, yeah, his leg's going to be worn out.
So I don't know whether to read into that as they don't practice kicking very much or they just don't have a ton of healthy kickers and they're not trying to kick a bunch. But there is like, they do practice field goal, set up and snap and everything.
Taking the ball.
We're just not seeing a ton of kicks. Yeah.
Are you worried about Greg Zuerlein at all? Like having a kicker that's dealing with a back injury doesn't seem great, but it sounds like this is something that he's dealt with before. I'm not really concerned because, frankly, having a kicker that's not healthy is kind of good. Like you can just go for it more often. You don't have to settle for field goals. I don't care about it, but like, do you care?
My whole feeling with the kicker is have a guy who has a reliable range at something, right? Like have a guy who you feel comfortable, at a certain range, and then don't use him unless you absolutely have to. Right?
Basically, for me, it's extra points, right?
Yeah, it's not like let's line up for the field. Let's get set up for the field goal. It's like, well, it's 4th and 26 on the 30. Like,
yeah,
we gotta that's I don't want to see so many. I'm encouraged by the lack of field goal kicking because to me it means like, we're going for it.
Yep,
we're going for touchdowns instead this year.
Can I give you one sort of related Cowboys news that just popped up on my timeline? I just want you to blind react to it. Are you ready?
Okay, yes, I love blind reactions.
According to Jordan Renan of ESPN, Joe Looney is retiring after one practice with the Giants. One practice of him running sprints. He's like, nope, I'm good. I don't.
Yeah, this is nonsense. I'm not doing this.
Things seem to be going really well with our friends over in New Jersey. So that is it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. We will be back on Wednesday, right? What's today? Thursday, right?
No, Thursday. Yeah,
Thursday. To discuss the Hall of Fame game. We'll tell you players to watch, and then we'll have a show late Thursday night, early Friday morning to recap it all. We will see you guys then.